out there, so probably people will be trickling in over the next few minutes, but we should get started. I'm Safwan Masri, Executive Vice President for Global Centers and Global Development, and it really gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this event today, Peace by Peace, how African women leaders are building new peace movements across Africa. This is it's been organized by the Nairobi Global Center, Columbia Global Center is in Nairobi. Our director, Murugi Ndirangu, has worked very hard on this, and she really regrets not being able to be with us this evening because of health issues. She's fine, but she just cannot travel. She had surgery not long ago. But we do have Pauline Muthoni, and Pauline, who's taking photos over there. Thank you for doing everything that you're doing to get this done. Michaela and the Women, Peace and Security Program at the Earth Institute is our partner and co-sponsor in this endeavor. And thank you, Michaela, for all the work that you've done and that you are doing. And we have the panelists and our great guests introduced in due course. This panel is part of a year-long series of events that commemorate the 10th anniversary of the beginnings of the Columbia Global Centers. We started 10 years ago with the center in Amman and the center in Beijing, and we now have 9 centers that span the world. In Mumbai, and we have Ravina Agarwal, the director of the Mumbai Center, here with us this evening. Nairobi, Beijing, as I mentioned, Amman, Jordan, Istanbul, Paris, Tunis, Rio de Janeiro, and Santiago de Chile. Each program is organized by the individual center, exploring a distinct theme of global relevance from a regional perspective. And tonight's panel is really emblematic of both what we have achieved, and what we want to continue to build on through our presence in the world, our unique presence in the world, I should say, compared to peer universities. Tonight's panel brings together intelligent and formidable women from different countries and regions across Africa. We have representation from Liberia, Cameroon, South Sudan, Tunisia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. The diversity in backgrounds provides each with distinctive individual experiences and expertise. There are shared challenges facing the respective communities, ranging from gender inequality to security to development. This really manifests Columbia's vision for educational engagement and collaboration at a global level by drawing on specialized and local expertise to address larger issues. It underscores the importance of being deeply responsive to and integrated with issues of local, regional, and global significance. Tonight's panel will expand our understanding of the critical impact of these women's efforts in empowering their communities. They lead nonviolent movements that have played roles in ending civil wars, and they have fostered civic mindedness and engagement amongst underprivileged and marginalized youth. This will give us a deeper appreciation of the challenges facing African women leaders and inform novel and sustainable approaches to existing and future challenges. Let me just finish by saying a word about the global centers. As I mentioned, we're in 9 locations around the world that I have just listed, and I said, this is a unique approach to being out there in the world. The Columbia Global Centers really represent the university's recognition that it is not sufficient for us to be dealing with international issues, drawing on international students and faculty from around the world, and engaging in important conversations and research and coursework here on the Morningside Heights campus, but that it is really important that we be out there in the world, engaged and learning from and learning with the rest of the world. So for example, identifying the women who will be informing us tonight and being exposed to the work that they do and being able to provide a regional and local context would not have been possible had it not been for Murugi's presence and the presence of Columbia through its global center in Nairobi. We're very, very proud of this initiative by Columbia University, and we feel that it has already, in the decade since we founded the Global Centers, done wonderful things to transform how we look at the world and how we learn about the world and how we engage as faculty and students in the world. So without further ado, I'm very, very glad to be standing here, welcoming you to our campus and inviting you to share with us what I am sure will be incredibly fascinating and incredibly important for us to be sensitized to. So thank you very much, and look forward to the discussion.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rowland. I'm the program director for the Women, Peace, and Security program, and it is such a delight to be able to see you all tonight and to welcome just a very couple quick words to open this panel. The Women, Peace, and Security program was just thrilled when Murugi Dirunga called us and asked us to co-sponsor this event and to be able to showcase some of the fellowship program. Launched in 2019, our Peace and Social Change Fellowship program partners with cohorts of frontline women change makers from across the globe to increase the visibility of their work and to train and mentor graduate students to work for and with them on projects of importance, and to really expand the very categories of peace and security, which is what we'll hear about today. Tonight you'll hear from our Executive Director, Nobel Peace Laureate Lema Bowie, as well as 4 other extraordinary women who achieved great success in their work. Tonight's panel was made possible from the collective efforts of multiple people. First, just a huge, huge thank you for being our host, Dr. Murugi Dirunga, to Dr. Swafwan Masri, and the whole Global Center team. Pauline, thank you so much for having us have this happen. Paul, Trevor, Linda, thank you for hosting us and making this event possible. Thanks also to the team of the Women, Peace, and Security program. Thanks to Hannah Yor, Padney, Meredith, Rachel, Sultan, and also the entire team of the Advanced Consortium Cooperation, Conflict, and Complexity, which is where we are housed. One request, which is that the work that we're going to be discussing tonight actually poses great security threats to the personal and community safety for some of our panelists. So while photos are welcome, we do ask that you don't live stream any pieces or video, and no using Facebook Live or live tweeting any quotes with names. But photos are welcome, and certainly the Global Center is recording for archival purposes, and we'll share in select ways. So now it's my very great honor to introduce Dr. Zaliki, who will be our moderator tonight. Dr. Zaliki is an assistant professor in Africana Studies here at Columbia, and her research expertise includes students' movements in the Horn of Africa, 20th century state formation across Africa, as well as comparative and political theory. She is currently completing a book manuscript just about to go out the door, which is so exciting, entitled Writing Revolution in Ethiopia, Knowledge Production and Social Change 1964 to 2016. Dr. Zaliki teaches courses on African political thought, critical theory, and histories of capitalism, and is an important contemporary African scholar. We're grateful for her comments and welcome everyone to tonight's presentation. Thank you.
I'm just going to invite everybody to join us up here. Welcome again. So I think that the way that we're going to structure this panel today is that we'll begin with
Lema Bowie, and she'll begin with opening remarks focusing on the current status across Africa of peace and security and the need to reimagine the very category of women, peace, and security. And then we'll just go down the row here. Each of the panelists will sort of respond to, I think we're having some feedback loop here with the microphone. All right. So each panelist will then respond to Ms. Bowie's comments. And I suppose what we want is for you to introduce your organization and talk about the work that you're doing, talk about the country context in which you're working in, and then to also describe some of the movement building that you've been engaged in, okay? And we're hoping that each panelist will talk for, 10, 12 minutes. Don't tire us out too much, although I'm sure that you can talk forever. But we do want to leave time for Q&A as well. So we'll just start with Christelle. Oh no, with Lema, and then Christelle after that.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be here and to be doing this with the Global Center, and to Michaela and her team. Thank you for this wonderful putting everything together. I'm a little bit on the side of jet lag, but I'm also at a place where I haven't mentally unpacked 3 weeks of intense work in the field. I spent almost 7 days in Cameroon as the head of mission for the African Women's Leaders Network. And for someone who lived through war, it was a lot of re-traumatization for me, sitting with women, listening to their stories, listening to communities talk about, and then also just getting a lot of intelligence on the death, the destructions, but then also the sad part is that this is one conflict in Africa that no one is really aware of. And so fighting to bring visibility to that, but also just going into a space where there's so much hopelessness, and the one hope that you find is the tenacity of the women. And then I leave Cameroon and go back to my own country, Liberia, where there is this study that says when women are involved in peace processes, it lasts 15 years. And Liberia is exactly at 15 years. We don't have a threat of military conflict, but if you went to Liberia today, the tensions are so high that you think we're going back to civil war because of the economic situation, the political rhetorics, and the hate messages on social media. And I just tell myself, social media is the devil. And so coming back from these two spaces and not really being able to, tomorrow I'm supposed to, either tomorrow, the day after, brief the UN on Cameroon, and I've been doing series of, so I've been having 26 hours in 24 hours every day for the last 3 weeks to a month. But one of the interesting things about all of this, and I alluded to it earlier, is how in the midst of all of these things, women continue to play active role in trying to resolve the crisis. In Cameroon, the fighting forces declared ghost towns. And ghost towns means no one can come out, even for school or for work. If you try and the insurgents group grab you, they will ask you short sleeves or long sleeves, and they will amputate you based on your response. The government who's supposed to be protecting the people is no better. But in the midst of all of these, women can come out and say, today we are declaring a day of peace, and they're able to do that. So the hope for our world is the ability for community women to mobilize. And it brings me back to the work that we do at the Women, Peace and Security Program here at Columbia, because there is this assumption that peace and security is primarily militarism. And as part of this program, we want to shift away from that. Going back to Liberia, there is no military threat. What we see is economic conditions. So peace and security for us in this program is basically how do we expand the whole concept of peace and security to include the human security needs. A few months back, I was at the Naval College somewhere here. And one of the things that I asked the young soldiers in that room was that if you had all of your needs being met, food, clothes, you can feel like a decent human being. Can anyone come and give you an AK-47 and $100 and say, take down the president of the US? The answer was a resounding no. But if people live in conditions that make them to feel like they cannot be, so reimagining peace and security to shift away from this whole concept of war and militarism to begin to look at the dignity of humanity, the need for food, the need for shelter, and this is the challenge for Liberia today. And in that moment or that space of being there, the point for the women, how do we mobilize when the threat is no longer militarism? So if you saw Pray the Devil Back to Hell, we were fighting to end war. Today, a few weeks, last week, we sat down to say, we know that that strategy may work, but it may not work. So we need to reimagine a new kind of movement to address the current challenge around human security needs. That's the first thing we try to do with this program. Expanding or reframing the whole understanding of peace and security to take into consideration human security. The second thing we want to do is to position experts and women activists, like these women. I mean, no one, and I can challenge anyone with double PhDs, masters, and anything to say, come into my community with all of your theories and say you're going to school me on peace work. It would be like Tiger Woods trying to take on Serena Williams in tennis. Because the people in the communities are the actual experts. And what we're trying to do with this program is to position grassroots activists as the experts that they are in the field. When we were in Cameroon on this delegation, it was very interesting to see how everyone from the bilateral partners to the donor community were referencing the women. The women. And you mentioned one woman, do you know Bay? And they, oh, yeah. Do you know Madam Oma? Yeah. These women are doing fantastic work. And they are the ones, and in setting to do an analysis of the Cameroonian conflict, and I'm not saying this because I'm a feminist, no if, no but, no however, whatever. I'm saying this because this is the reality. They were the ones who were able to give me a clear analysis and a stakeholder kind of thing. Go here, do this. Everyone else was playing politics. So we feel like in this program, these are the people that we can work with, bring them into academia and help to shape the conversation. We no longer want to see these women as subjects of research. We want them to be active participants and partners in all of the research. The third thing that we're hoping to do is documentation. Cutting-edge research around the work that women have done. If you go from South Sudan to Cameroon to all of these places, what you get is anecdote about women's work. How do we document these very substantive work that women have been doing and continue to do so that someone can walk into a library, pick up a book and say, I can reference Babe, or I can reference Ria, or I can reference, some activists who have been doing this work as part. So we hope for that these three areas we can focus on. But really and truly for me as an activist, because with the Nobel, the whatever, I still find myself as an activist. And as an activist, I feel like there's no way we can talk peace. There's no way we can talk global peace. There's no way we can talk global security in the absence of the very important work that women are doing at the grassroots level.
Christelle is founder and executive director of Hope for the Needy. She's a youth advocate leader and a champion of peace movement building. She's led youth-led nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to helping the most privileged and marginalized youth in Cameroon achieve lasting positive changes in their lives. So just introduce yourself, your organization, and the way that you're engaged in movement building.
Thank you very much. Who am I when the shackles of injustice, of threats, of violence and pain is tearing womanhood and humanity apart before my very eyes? I'm Christelle Bay. I am the founder of Hope for the Needy Association, an organization whose mission is to strengthen the leadership, power, and voices of women and girls in communities. We use debate, drama, poetry, spoken word, and music to raise awareness on and engage communities in responding to and preventing gender-based violence. We equally engage teenage girls in using painting, teenage girls who are victims of gender-based violence in using painting to represent their frustration, their pain, their hopes on canvas. This provides for inner healing for them and also helps build inner peace. An interesting aspect of our programs is our agricultural project that engages young people in sustainable agriculture best practices for an alternative livelihood. I also happen to be a 2014 fellow of the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders and a 2019 Peace and Social Change Fellow of Columbia University's Women, Peace and Security Program. The Women, Peace and Security Program means a lot to me. It means a lot to my organization and to my country because through Lima, Mama Lima, as I call her, and the Women, Peace and Security team, my team and I were inspired and were nurtured to give birth to what we now call the Women for Women movement in Cameroon. The Women for Women movement creates for this safe space for women to raise their voices, to talk about, to represent their needs and concerns about their priorities and the future, the believing for themselves, for their families and their children, especially their girls. I'm pleased to be here, and thank you very much.
All right, Ria. Ria Uyada from South Sudan, founder and executive director, Crown the Women. She's a women's rights and peace activist from South Sudan and the founder and executive director of Crown the Women. She's the alumna of the 2017 Department of State's International Visitor Leadership Program on Education and Women's Activism and the 2016 Young African Leadership Program. And she has many other accomplishments to her name. She's also served as a technical support member in the high-level revitalization forum supporting women and civil society in the South Sudan peace process. So again, if you could talk about the organizations that you're involved in and how you're engaging in movement building in South Sudan.
All right, thank you so much. I'm so happy and excited to be here. I mean, it's amazing to always be invited in such spaces. I want to say that as South Sudanese women, in most cases when you ask, where is South Sudan? Someone is like, you're from Sudan? Where is that? So I'm happy that I'm here to speak about South Sudan, and for those who don't know about South Sudan, you will get to know about South Sudan. For those who know, you will learn more about South Sudan. My name is Ria, you already said that. Ria William Yada. Ria means happiness, thanks to my auntie who called me Ria, and I hope that by the end of the day we shall leave this place very happy. I'm happy to be invited here, and I would love to congratulate the centers for making 10 years, and I'm happy to be part of the 10 years. I am a fellow I met my sister Bay here through that program of the Women, Peace and Security. And personally, I have developed deeper passion for women and for peace. I mean, if you said you want to hear more about my work. I have been doing a lot of work with children, with youth, but I did not find that deeper passion like the passion I'm finding in the women work that I'm doing. I was raised in Uganda. We left South Sudan when I was still a child because of the crisis. I came back to South Sudan and I never went back. I said, this is home. Even though it is war, I have to stay here and do something for my country. I work for Crown the Woman, and Crown the Woman is a women's rights organization, still a young organization, that is putting or building a foundation for women, a space for women to just reclaim who we are, to mention it and say, we are women and we are feminists. What I have been doing is basically working with women for the past 4 years, pushing where possible. One, I've been part of the peace process as a technical support team, and what that means is we provide support to the women who are delegates in the peace process and the civil society. We support them in a way that if they have documents to look at, we look at it, engender it, make it youthful, and give all this advice. And we don't do it alone. We do it with all South Sudanese. We coordinate with them through radio, through social media, and through these places to get their voices on the table where they cannot get their voices. We also shared whatever was happening in the peace process with them so that they know what is happening and be part of the process. So what we have done also as Crown the Woman is mobilize people and remind them that as a South Sudanese, you have a role to play to change this country. And so we brought together teachers and asked them, what is your role as a teacher to build this country? What is your role as a youth to build this country? What's your role as a mother? What's your role as a father to build this country? So these are some of the small work I have done, and yes, we will hear more about it. Thank you.
Okay, so then we have Omazine Khalifa, yes? Yes. From Tunisia, and she's a founder and CEO of Multicultural, Creative Youth. Is that the, okay, sorry. You're a telecommunications engineer, an activist, former politician, founder and CEO of Creative Youth, and I won't mispronounce the name of your organization again. You use arts, sports, and technology to do the work that you're doing in marginalized communities targeted by violent extremists, and provides those youth with opportunities to build skills and gain access to resources and networks to foster their creativity as builders of Tunisian society. So yeah, again, talk about your organization, the context of the country that you're working in, and how you understand movement building.
Thank you very much. It's truly an honor to be here tonight. Thank you to the Global Center and to the Women, Peace and Security Program. My name is Omazine Khalifa, as you said, and the organization I run in Tunisia is called Multicultural, which means creatives in Arabic. And it's a social impact organization that inspires youth to become the nation leaders of the democracy in Tunisia. As you may know, Tunisia started the Arab uprisings about 9 years ago, and it's known for two main things right now. Being the only country that is generally and successfully transitioning from dictatorship to democracy, peacefully. And also, we sadly become to be known as a country that is exporting the highest number of youth to fight for Daesh in Syria and Iraq. So, let me tell you one story. Actually, the story of why I founded Multicultural. 5 years ago, I met with a young man after seeing a post on Facebook. He shared a very personal story, actually a shocking story, of how he was radicalized about 15 years ago during the Second Gulf War. So I sent him a Facebook message because I wanted to meet with this guy who was very open about something that is really dangerous, I thought. And he accepted to meet with me and have a coffee. So I'm gonna call him Shaheen, just to protect his privacy, and he doesn't want to be known for that story anymore. So Shaheen, 15 years ago, was 16 years old. He was a very smart guy, but very agitated, and lacking a lot of discipline, according to his teachers. So he couldn't stay still. He was expelled from school many times. So his life was a bit chaotic. His point of reference was his grandfather, whom he loved a lot. And one day his grandfather passed away, so he found himself lost. And because his grandfather was a religious man, he thought, I should go to the mosque. This is where I'll be closer to him. And in the mosque, he started to read Quran, but he started also to meet with the young people, mainly young men, who gathered after the prayers. And they were talking about the Second Gulf War, and they were talking about mobilizing and going to fight in Iraq. And very quickly, very rapidly, he found himself engulfed in this, whatever you call it, movement or secret movement of preparation to go to fight in Iraq. But his father didn't give up on him and wanted him back to school. So he forced him back into a private school. And Shaheen, after 3 years of absence, discovered a new curriculum. He discovered new classes that really appealed to his heart and mind. He discovered philosophy, he discovered literature, and he discovered poetry. And there was this teacher, a woman who had a very profound effect on him. She understood the interest of her students about the Iraq War, so she started debates in class. So he was able to challenge whatever thought he got from the mosque around in the class and have different opinions. He also met with another young man his age who loved poetry and Arabic and Quran, but also loved black metal music. And he discovered a whole new world. And one day, when someone whispered to him in the coffee of his neighborhood, he lived in a working class neighborhood that lacked infrastructure for youth. He didn't have any cultural activity, any sports activity. He only had the mosque and the school, of course. So when someone whispered to him, it's time, get ready, we're going to go to Iraq very soon, he really had a doubt about going. And he confided in his new friend, who surprisingly told him, you know, if all writers like us, if all people who are skilled with pens leave the country, who's gonna fight for progress? And Shaheen was sure after this very brief conversation, where his friend didn't blame him for wanting to go to jihad, and basically valued his love for poetry, for Quran, for music now. And he decided to stay. And the story that Shaheen told me happened because we were the same age, we are using social media, and also we were in an open space now in Tunisia. We have freedom of speech, so he wasn't fearing me. And I was not representing the government. I was just a young woman like him trying to understand what was happening. So Shaheen also said to me that if his friend had blamed him, he would definitely have gone to Iraq. It was only because he felt he had a choice that he made the right choice to stay. So meeting Shaheen set me on the path to create Multicultural, because I understand that we can actually divert youth from a violent path if we sit, listen, and understand. And actually, it takes a village to take out a youth who is getting radicalized to a peaceful path. For Shaheen, it was his father, his friend, his teacher. It was arts, education, critical thinking. So all of this should be provided to every youth who live in marginalized areas affected by violent extremism. And that's why Multicultural now is an organization that tries to provide these safe spaces where youth can come and confide in a place where they won't be judged, and also where they can discover their skills and they can be inspired to lead a creative life, to lead their community peacefully for change, and actually even build a future that they never thought it was possible for them before. And I hope I will be able to talk more, but I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
All right, last but not least, Rumbi Chisenga is a 2018-2019 Obama Scholar and the former program manager at the Mandela Institute for Development Studies, which is a Pan-African think tank that engages Africans on finding Afrocentric solutions to the continent's development challenges. She's also a 2018-2019 Obama Foundation Scholar at Columbia University. So perhaps talk about what organizations you belong to and how you understand movement building.
Thank you, Zoe. So I'm a double scholar. So I am Zimbabwean. I live in South Africa now. I am informally or jokingly, colloquially referred to as an economic refugee. But that actually is a true reflection of what happened in my life. That I went to South Africa to study and left just after high school, went to university in the early 2000s. And in my first year of study, my parents could afford to pay for my fees. They were average middle class family, but they could afford to, send me to university in South Africa. By my third year, my parents could not even afford to buy me a flight ticket to come home, let alone pay for my fees. Because Zimbabwe went into a rapid economic collapse, as everyone knows, or I hope as everyone might know. So I raised this, not perhaps to play the victim card. I'm very privileged and also very grateful to be here, thanks to Columbia Global Center and the Women, Peace and Security Program. But to agree largely to what Lema was saying earlier on when she started talking about how the work of peace and security is often characterized as work that addresses conflict and violence, or counters conflict and violence rather. And in situations where you have a country like Zimbabwe, which can be described as non-violent right now, there isn't any active conflict in a sense. It's easy for at least some of us in the world to conclude that it's a peaceful country. We can do the same for South Africa, which seems to be performing very well, one of the top 3 large economies in Africa. But it's also a country that has high incidences of rape, as high as some countries that are at war, and just high rates of violent crime in general. So I think this is truly an important conversation to highlight some of those areas that we could neglect in addressing or in trying to foster peace and security. And I'm really grateful to be on the panel. So as Zaneki said earlier on, I worked for a Pan-African think tank that was based in Johannesburg. And some of the work that we were doing was to try and mobilize young people across the continent to be more engaged in elections and governance. So some of you will know or may know that Africa has the fastest growing youth population, currently estimated to be 65% of the continent is under 30 years old, and the trend will continue at least, up until 2100. So the continent is only going to get younger and younger, but you might know as well that most of our presidents, our political leaders, our government leaders, into their 60s, 70s, some even in their 80s, and a few in their 90s. So there has been almost an observation from, let's say, the institutions, but in agitation when it comes to young people about being excluded from decision-making processes. And there has also been just recent developments where young people are sort of invited to the table, but almost as a way of just, representation, tokenism really, like, we have 10 people around the table who are young, who are below 40, and so young people have been pushing back and challenging that, and they really have been demanding seats at the table. But at Minds, what we used to say, our work revolved around encouraging young people to create their own table if they need to, if they can't claim that seat at the table. So what we're trying to do was to equip young people with the knowledge they need, the skills, and then the networks, which was, we thought the secret was really linking young people across the continent together, to be more strategic, to realize that young people can actually, if they work together, determine the outcome of elections in many African countries, and to inspire young people to take that strategic leverage and work towards, creating their own tables in a very peaceful way. So that's some of the work that I was doing at Minds, and I hope I can speak a little bit more about other work that we're doing.
All right, so I feel like we've gotten a really sort of general introduction into what everybody does, and I'm wondering if we can get more specific and concrete examples of the work that you're doing and how you think that work is transforming the ways in which we think about what peace and security and the category of women, peace and security. So, Christelle, should we start with you then?
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mama Lima had indicated before, Cameroon has this beautiful intention to become an emerging economy by 2035. But this road to emergence is actually meeting a couple of challenges. The first was Boko Haram's attack in the northern part since 2014. And before the country was able to brave itself to face Boko Haram's attack, the Anglophone crisis came in 2016. Permit me mention that Cameroon is home to over 270 ethnic groups, each bearing their own very strong cultural identities. And besides that, we have the English-speaking part that makes up 2 out of the 10 regions of the country. In 2016, lawyers and teachers took to the streets to advocate, to raise awareness on the need for reforms in policies and institutions that allow for the identity of the minority-speaking part not to get missing in the bigger picture of Cameroon. But their taking to the streets wasn't really welcomed by the leaders and resulted in a military crackdown on the lawyers and teachers, military crackdown on civilians, and since 2017, the story of Cameroon has not been the same. It's been ghost towns every Monday. Like every Monday, everybody is asked to stay indoors. If you go out, we have cases of people's fingers chopped off, hands chopped off, people abducted, people killed, just because they try to violate the orders of the non-state armed groups. We also have situations, since 2016, schools have not been going on, basically, in the 2 English-speaking parts of the country. What I'm saying is, in my community now, over 80% of children are in the house. They have been asked to stay home by the non-state armed groups. Children who try to force their way to school, some are abducted, fingers chopped, cut off with cutlasses because they try to get an education. I'm sorry. Yeah, so besides the Mondays of the ghost towns, we have situations where they call for 10 days ghost towns again, asking people to stay indoors for 10 whole days. Each time I remember that we have women in our communities who make $5 a day from selling tomatoes. When you ask a woman who makes $5 a day from selling tomatoes, which is already paying on her, when you ask her to stay indoors for 10 days, what kind of peace do you want to have, want that kind of woman to have? What kind of peace do you want her children to have? What kind of future would she have? So the story of Cameroon currently is a story of the pain of a woman. On one hand, it's the military crackdown on the population. On the other hand, it's the separatists telling the population what to do and what not to do. So people are caught in the middle, women are caught in the middle. Issues of rape have become very common. Gender-based violence has become an order of the day. Children are trafficked every day. Some days you get up, you cannot go out because they'll tell you somebody's head has been chopped off and it's on the streets. And the military is burning places and attacking populations around there. And there's this panic everywhere. It's not every day, it's not a normal thing to see humanity, to see somebody's head chopped off and just hung somewhere on the streets. In the heart of this, in 2015, we started what we call, after Boko Haram's attack, my organization started a project we call the Enhancing Multicultural Dialogue for Peace. When we started the Enhancing Multicultural Dialogue for Peace in 2015, we didn't even know that 2016 and 17 till today was going to meet what is currently going on in my community. The purpose of the Enhancing Multicultural Dialogue for Peace was to first to create a platform for intergenerational dialogue. We understand that the elderly people, they have the experience, but they don't have all the answers to the problems the world is facing. Just like the younger generation with their enthusiasm, we have a vision for the future we want. But for true peace to reign, there must be this platform for the vision of the young people to be combined with the experience of the elderly, so that together we can find solutions to the most pressing problems our world is facing. That was one of the essence of our Enhancing Multicultural Dialogue for Peace. Through the project, we used poetry and spoken word to engage young people across the country to raise their voices for non-violence and for reforms in non-violent ways. We also, in the heart of this, initiated the Creative Arts for Girls Empowerment project that also uses debates, drama, and songs to raise awareness on gender-based violence and to provide for inner healing for victims of gender-based violence. Above all, what is very pressing or touching to my heart now is that what touches my heart very dearly now is the Women for Women movement, which is born out of the bloodshed in our country. It's born out of the pain of the woman. It's born out of the rape we see every day. Born because we see our children not being able to, who cannot go to school. Not because they don't want to go to school, but because they have been forced not to go to school. So the Women for Women movement currently has 200 women leaders from the 2 English-speaking part of the country, but we intend to make it to involve women from all the 10 regions. And the purpose of this is women speaking up for the kind of peace they believe in. Currently in my community, we have thousands of internally displaced people in neighboring Nigeria, in other parts of Cameroon, and in bushes. When I visited one of the internally displaced camps, I saw a child who was born in the bush, but the stick pierced the eye. This innocent child lives today with one eye, not for any fault of his, but because their homes were burnt and they were intimidated and sent into bushes. To an internally displaced young woman in the bush, peace is access to sanitary pads. And that is the kind of peace we provide when we mobilize sanitary pads to give to an internally displaced young girl. To a hungry young person who is radicalized, who's taken up arms, peace is food. Justice is access to food. And when we engage that young person in sustainable agriculture best practices for income generation or for an alternative livelihood, we build peace. To a woman who has seen her girl being raped, peace is a world where womanhood is respected. So our story, Hofner works to change the face of peace, pushing across the belief that peace is actually the calm in the mind, body, and spirit of every woman and girl. Thank you.
All right, Ria. So again, give us a concrete example of the work that you're doing and how you think it changes your community, but also challenges the concept of women, peace, and security.
All right. When we speak about peace by peace, South Sudan is that country that is that peace with so many cracks that need to be brought together, that need to be clipped together in order to build it. South Sudan is still a very young country. We are the youngest in the world, but yet we are still breathing. I mean, I ask myself, if we fought for liberation, if we fought to be independent, if we fought to have our own nation, then why are we still killing each other? I ask myself this question every day, and I fail to get answers because there's so many pieces that need to be put together to make the puzzle make sense. For me, why I say South Sudan is a piece that needs to be patched together is this is a country that every one of us here is responsible to either build or break down. I mean, recently, for those who have been following news, we do know that our leaders have been paying an organization here in the US to lobby the Trump government in order not to establish the hybrid court. And so when I say we are all responsible to build this young nation, this starts from here. I mean, peace is having people having the justice that they deserve. And if we start paying not to have the court set up, then what peace are we having? We are signing a peace agreement and we are denying people justice. Is that peace? When I'm in Juba, when I'm in South Sudan, I wake up with so much mixed feelings, with so much fear of what will happen next, of Now we have signed a peace agreement. We have worked so hard to have this agreement to be signed, especially as women. I mean, in the beginning, even women were not brought to the table. You women did not fight. What do you want on the table? They forget that it's us who carry the burden of the war. It's us women who are the mothers to the ones being killed, to the ones fighting, to the nation. But when it comes to the table, you women did not fight. Then it beats the sense of it all. In the peace process, for example, while our leaders were talking about have 10%, the parties have 30%, have 100%, struggling for percentages, we the women were saying we need to table the causes of the war. We need to table the reasons as to why we are fighting. We need to table what we need to do, the solutions for this country to move forward. And so women, we organize ourselves. And because we're talking about movement building, a movement is something that is built out of organization, something that is built from feelings. I mean, you cannot think of a movement if you don't feel the pain. And so we organized ourselves and said, we have had enough as women. We need to make sure that things change in this country. We need to make sure that this war stops. We need to make sure that the economic hardships that we are feeling are able to be worked on to be stopped. I mean, South Sudan's economic hardship is becoming worse by day. We have 3-digit inflation. I mean, you go to the market in the morning and in the evening the price is different. This is the hardship I am talking about that we are living in. And so as women, we said, okay, we came up with 2 terms, the green lights and the red lights. What that means is, red lights, if we see that there is no inclusion in the peace process, if there is no inclusion of youth, of women, of everyone, then that's red light and we shall not accept this process. And this is the sweetness about women's inclusion, you know. Women don't go there and say, give me 20%. We go there and say, we want everyone to be included. We want to be part of this. We want to be part of this change. And this is the sweetness that comes with women being part of the process. So we also say we want 50% inclusion of women as the green light. So if it's discussed, we will be part of the process. If it's not, we will not be part of this process. And it was a struggle and a fight, and instead of 50, we got 35%, which is better than the 25% that we had before. But the sad thing, when I say I deal with mixed feelings, is the sad thing is we have fought for this. You know, they did not just say and say women have 35%. We had to fight, we had to bargain, we had to push. But it's unfortunate that right now, as I speak, in South Sudan, we have mechanisms that have been created. For example, the Joint Monitoring Commission, we have the security sector reforms and these bodies. And when parties are saying submit your lists and your names, we have parties that gave in a list with no woman. And they say we don't have women. This is a country that is made of 60% plus women. Women who have been fighting with them, women who have been fighting for change, and then when the cake comes to be shared, they say we don't have women. The other thing we've been doing is mobilizing and sharing our story. And one thing that I love about being part of the Women of Peace and Security is our story is not told. I mean, if you go on the internet, you'll find it's very hard to find a story about a woman who has pushed, who has created change. The pieces are not yet put together. We lack that, and if we don't put that together, and it's going to be bad for our children who are going to come in. You know, I want to share a story of a woman who inspired me. She's called Agweragu. And this woman she moved to Australia, and when the peace process was starting, she came back and flew to Addis Ababa and asked that women be part of this process because the women were not. And when she got there, no, women will not be part of this process. She's like, women should be part of this process. And when they refused, she locked up the IGAD members in that office. So IGAD is the Intergovernmental Operational Development. So the people in that office, she locks the office and says, if women are not included, you stay there. And what is sweet, what was nice about that is they stayed there for even more than 6 hours. And it was like, she would send a piece, include women, they send it back, like back and forth and back and forth. And after that, she was deported. But it was through that, at least we got women. She paved way for us. You see, what beats my understanding again, the mixed feelings is, how come as women, we fight to be part of the table? How come as women, we fight to create change? I mean, we were not fighting, give me gun to go kill someone. We are fighting, give me the space to create change. But we are not being given that space. So, long story short, we have 35%, which is a good thing, but we need to keep on fighting to ensure that the implementation happens. And this implementation needs all of us, not only South Sudanese, all of us. If we do not follow, if we do not remind our leaders that this needs to be done, we shall go back to zero. We are talking about movement building. And I love that for South Sudan, we are now starting to wake up. The youth are building movements, the women are getting well organized, and we are getting there, though it's scary. I mean, even just coming here, someone will say, what are you going to do in New York? What are you doing there? What is happening? Who invited you? And these questions even like, okay, there's some things I should maybe not say now, maybe share it later and things like that. So we need to do a lot of work for this baby country so that we don't lose it again, but we are already losing it. Thank you.
Same question. Yes. I'm so humbled by your stories. And let me tell you that we are transitioning from dictatorship to democracy, but during the transition, it's the same struggle. Like, for women to be at the table, to decide what laws are prioritary, to preserve gender equality, to write the constitution, to run for office, it's going to be the same fight. We were lucky in Tunisia to have a prominent group of women who were aware that in a transition, women can do so much in terms of rights, that they were present, lobbying all the time with all different political parties. We can talk about it later, but the fight never ends. So coming back to Multicultural and the work we do, as I said earlier, it takes a village for a youth to get de-radicalized, if I put it this way. But for us at Multicultural, it's bigger than youth de-radicalization and violent extremism prevention. Because when I talked with Shaheen, it was 15 years ago. So youth disenfranchisement is not new in Tunisia. We were just under dictatorship and we were not able to talk about it, we were not able to see it, we were not able even to solve it because we didn't have the space. And frankly, having a policy in working class areas that is youth-centered and that is focused on youth fulfillment is something that's new because we are transitioning, we're also learning what democracy is. So for us, it's very important to innovate at the local level. For us, innovation is talking to youth, like Shaheen, but actually talking to so many youth, we understand that the path towards radicalization is different. It depends on people's background, family stories, education background, and you name it. So we cannot have like a personalized path when we are a civil society organization. So we understood that we needed to do a research. We start by studying the infrastructure, we study the living condition of these youth, because we need to provide information not only for us to inform our work, but also we need to provide this information to government, private sector, and other civil society organizations. We need to benefit others through the access and trust we were able to build within the communities. So that's what we started to do. With Multicultural, we chose an area that was particularly targeted by a violent extremist group, and we went after them and we studied the living condition with a group of academics from Tunis University. And we published our research with a series of recommendations for policymakers, private sector, and civil society organizations. And then we used these recommendations, at least the things that an association with limited resources like ours can do. And we started to provide arts and leadership courses for kids who have talents, but mainly don't know that they have it. And we started to provide also the support to listening to those who have risky behaviors. We discovered a lot of drug abuse and alcohol and suicidal attempts, and you name it. A lot of mental health and health issues. And also victims of violence, perpetrators of violence also, who want to speak and want to get a support. In parallel to this local innovation, we do what we call a national level innovation. We try to build this bridge with government so they closely follow what we do. We obviously protect the information, we protect the privacy of the kids and the families, but we want them to see what we are doing and how they can take it at the national level. Our role as a civil society organization is not to replace the government, it's actually to show them that there is a gap and they could be filling it if they implement a policy at the national level. So we do also advocacy work, so they take our experience and they replicate it in other working class areas affected by violent extremism. And to come back to the question of women, peace and security, for us, as women and youth who started Multicultural, we see our work as crucial. Again, not only as violent extremism prevention, but also as building the democracy. Because we need to change how policies are made. For 23 years of dictatorship, policies were made based on ideology, and we were not able to criticize anything. But now we want to challenge that. We want policies to be based on evidence, and we want them to be participatory. We want the youth, who are the heart, actually they make up to 60% of the Tunisian population, to be sitting at the table, as you said. So it's so important because if you think about it, our president is 90 years old. And the elite around him is a little younger, but still, these old people, usually old men, are deciding for the future of youth who were not even born during the dictatorship time. So they have a very old archaic mentality, and we need to change that. So, and I think as women, as youth, we are aware. Actually, we see ourselves as not the ones who are providing the answer, but the youth have the answer, the youth we work with. That's why our objective is really to help them realize that they are the leaders of the nation democracy. They are the leaders of their community. They just need the skills, the resources, the access to do it peacefully and creatively. Thank you.
I'm going to be brief. I too wanted to highlight the importance of documentation. So that, like Leima said, and as Omizing mentioned in a response just recently, when we were designing the youth program in Elections and Governance of Minds, we realized that there actually wasn't a lot of research and facts about youth and their perceptions and their attitudes on participation, or just even detailed information on the activities that young people were engaging in. So most of the information that was available was in the form of like news articles or just pieces or blog pieces, but there wasn't like comprehensive studies that could perhaps be used for policy making. women academic spaces are often accused of being in the ivory tower, but I do want to say, and I'm pointing this out to encourage you all to remain in the space. Those of you who are in the space of doing research and putting together stats and data, it really is important. And I realized when I was on the other side, especially for issues that have to do with women, if you go into a room and you share these stories and you have the anecdotal evidence, people will be moved, they will cry, they will walk away and forget about it. When it comes to debating and discussing policy, what will people go to? Research. What do the numbers say? Where do we have a clearer picture of what's going on? Who's hungry? In dollar terms, what are they, how much income are they getting daily? And if that information isn't available, then, women are just left behind. So one of the studies that we did at Minds was an 8-country study that took us about 9 months to complete, to try and understand youth perception and attitude towards participation in elections and governance, and to also try and understand just the nuances across these different countries. So what was influencing or encouraging participation in some instances, and what was hindering or inhibiting participation in others. And some of the findings that came up was exactly this gender divide, that even though young people are often bracketed together by age, the young women are further marginalized. It sounds very obvious, especially if you're a woman or if you're in academic spaces. It sounds obvious, but to not have it in writing, to not have it as facts, is still doing a disservice, a further disservice to women. So I wanted to bring that up as an example of something that I did that I thought it was really important and relevant. And that study has been referenced over and over again. And it's now kind of getting old. I mean, we did it in 2016. And the idea was for us to build a baseline state of variables that we could track over years and compare whether the work that was being done in the space of elections and governance was actually shifting these attitudes and perceptions. So the idea is to continue doing this work over and over again and track it and see where the progress is being made. But it requires investment and I guess more people who are willing to remain in the space of producing numbers and who aren't sort of deterred by this ivory tower criticism. So I just wanted to throw it out there.
That's great. Shout out to the university. All right. Layla, do you want to do some concluding remarks before I open it up for question and answer?
I think we should just
open it up? Okay. So, questions?
Anyone who has questions, actually, maybe we could start to form a line right here.
Is it okay to put comment and question together?
Questions more than comments.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
the microphone is off.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Abimbola Ajayi. I represent the Women for Equity and Fairness of Nigeria, the Lagos State Chapter. Every story that I heard today is not new in the African setting. It's such a pity. My major concern, especially in where I represent, we found that the same thing you're finding out. The bottom line has been that if you don't have a political voice, you can't get nowhere. You will struggle and struggle, and the struggle will be limited to exactly where you are. And at the point, it will become very frustrating. My question is, who is holding the leadership in African countries responsible, accountable? Where's the justice? Because where there is no justice, there will always be violence. Forget, even in the home. You're in the home, your husband is not being fair, your wife is not being fair, eventually there's going to be violence in that home. Because no human being created on this earth likes to be trampled on their feet. If they don't know it for a while, after a point in time, they're going to know that they're not supposed to be trample on the feet. But the African nations seems to be like they play some kind of games with those who are even supposed to be holding them accountable. I am saying that I do not believe within the African setting we can hold our leaders accountable. I do not believe we can. Because they seem to have a way of working it around to frustrate whatever effort you try to make. So I believe that my question is still is, who is holding them accountable internationally? Who is holding them accountable in the world where they can say, okay, Tunisia, for example. Okay, because if you don't have a leader that their heart is good, a lot of things is not going to happen because it's all up to the person to take a decision and to do the right thing. But what about those who don't want to do the right thing? Who is holding them accountable in the global, this global space? Thank you.
Thank you. You can give the mic, actually. Should we take a few questions and then go back to the panel?
Hi, my name is Nikisha Alcindor. I'm here at Columbia University as faculty at the School of Professional Studies. And my question is, so I sit here, my parents were immigrants from Jamaica. We have similar issues, but I'm American, born here. How do you translate, like I sit here and listen to the issues that I've heard before and the stories I've heard before, but how can people like me or people in this room who are so distant from that experience help you?
So let me jump in with the accountability part. Coming back from Liberia, there was a need to engage. The government is complicated. Many things happen. And once myself and some of the women that I worked with in the past started our engagement, the first thing that became clear to us was that the lack of trust. Everyone figured if you went to do mediation, you were sent by the government, and if you were sent by the government, you had been paid. So there is that problem of lack of trust. But then in further investigation, you come to understand that even those institutions that are supposed to be the integrity institutions have been compromised. For example, if you have a group of religious leaders going to do mediation, and you just take one coupon of gas from the government, no one trusts you anymore. So what set us apart from all of those people who were doing their mediation is the fact that we could boldly say, no one sent us. That integrity piece became our trump card. That integrity piece became the position from which we could engage the government. And on 3 occasions, in all of these engagements, we were challenged. And I could boldly say, from the presidency to wherever, don't even try to question my integrity. And I feel like if we have more communities, more individuals in our societies really forgetting about their economic plight and being able to stand up to our leaders, the things that we see them do, they may not be doing. When we talk, and Michaela was very generous about time because we had done all of these consultations in private, and then I had this meeting with the president of Liberia. That morning, she got a glimpse of my work with the women who are crazy in one hotel room, trying to put into structure everything we heard to present. We had that meeting. First, the president said to me, this is going to be 5 minutes, and I hope I'm not being recorded. And 5 minutes turned to 1 hour, 45 minutes in that meeting. Because every time he put one position down, I pushed back. And I could only push back in that space with my voice because I had not been born and I haven't been compromised. At the end of the day, everything that we said he should do, even though he didn't agree, then he agreed to only one. As of yesterday, he started taking some of the actions. And I feel like this is it. Coming back to Cameroon was the same thing. Go to sit with one of their powerful government officials, and the first thing he says, oh, the UN sent you they've given you this, they've given you that, they've given you the other, so now you can come here in a very aggressive tone. I grabbed his hand. I said, listen to me. You don't know me. This is our first encounter. First thing, never try to preempt a West African woman. I didn't come here to tell you anything. I came to ask you if there was anything that I could do to help this situation. And he leaned back. At that moment, the way he looked at me, I knew I had commanded the space. I asked all of his staff and my people to leave the room, leave the two of us. And then we had our private conversation. By the time we're leaving that room, he was calling me my sister. So the point that I'm making to you is integrity. For those of us who say we speak for civil society, we can't afford to continue to be compromised. I left the president's office and someone asked me, did you tell him about the conditions of the road leading to your office? I was like, what the hell? Did I go to ask him to fix the road leading to my office? Well, you were just supposed to ask. No! Because that is the problem. So your question about how can you help? I believe for me, in working locally and being an expert before globally, and the beauty of this program that we run at this university is that it's not just the global south, it is also the global north. So we've been working in May, in June, we're going to have a gathering of women activists from here in the US, from Harlem, from the Bronx, from Chicago, people who are doing fantastic work. And to say that grassroots women activism is not important in the US is to be saying that this country is at peace. And we know that it is not at peace. I'll stop here.
I did. I wanted to, I guess, challenge the question a little bit. I know you were asking about what the rest of the world can do about Africa, and you said in your question that you don't think Africans can hold their governments to account. I mean, I know it's been a challenge, and in some ways we could say we failed, but I think that it's largely our responsibility to hold our own governments accountable to start with. And I wanted to share with you some of the work that's being done in Nigeria actually by young people to try and help with this. So there's an initiative, was a movement called Not Too Young to Run. It still is. It was a coalition of about 40 youth organizations that came together to challenge the constitution and lobby for the lowering of the minimum age for running for Senate, I think. And they managed to get that passed last year, I think. So that's just one example. Another is also an initiative called Budget, where one young Nigerian started an organization that takes public budgets and then simplifies them so that the average Nigerian can understand them, and they too can question how their money is being spent, and they can hold the government to account. I just chose these two examples because they are relevant for Nigeria, which is where you say you come from, but across the continent, there are many of these initiatives where young people are just thinking creatively about what they can do without necessarily risking their lives, but what they can do to empower one another so that they can hold their governments to account. So I wouldn't say that we should lose hope completely at this point. I think to your question about what can be done, or the question about what you can do to help, is to support these initiatives. Many of them are really struggling with funding. They're also struggling with skills. And I know a lot of people say, well, I can't just give money, or I don't have the money, but if you have some skills to lend, if you have some time to lend even, for some people it literally is just maybe like a holiday every 3 to 5 years to avoid burnout. And I'm not, advertising that, you send civil society leaders' holidays or anything like that. I'm just saying that sometimes it literally
Why not?
just
We'll use some Hawaii time right now.
but but sometimes it literally is just a friend who has a little bit of distance from the context that you're working in, somebody who can just be a listening ear, and somebody who can encourage you. So I'm very happy to share a little bit more information about the work that young people are doing on the continent. If there are many of you who are interested in knowing how they can support, but there is work that's being done to at least equip young people to be able to hold their governments to account.
All right, thank you. So another question?
Hi everyone, thank you all so much for being here. I wrote down my question because I wanted to make sure that it was clear. But I'm also Jamaican and I'm returning back to Jamaica at the end of my master's study in May. And I don't know if you know, but we have like an extremely high murder rate. It's like right behind Afghanistan. The country is effectively at war, but there is no acknowledgement of that war. And in fact, I think there is significant undermining of like human rights and civil protections of citizens by the government in trying to decrease this crime rate or the extent of murders. And I guess I'm working with a number of young people on creating a system of protecting those rights, and I'm wondering how you do that in an environment, or how do you create peace initiatives in an environment where there isn't an acknowledgement that we are like in fact at war. I know that sounds like a big question.
I think I would just quickly say, and maybe Bay and Ria, especially Bay, coming from Cameroon, where they've been in denial for 3 years, and even till today, they're still in denial, because when I was there, all of the questions during my mission from Prime Minister to everyone, how would you categorize what is happening here? And one group will say crisis, Anglophone crisis, something, and these are government officials and internally displaced people, so no one really named it war. But I think the first step from my experience is awareness that this is not normal. What happens to communities that go through a prolonged period of violence is that kind or those kinds of violence becomes normalized. And so you have to begin to have conversations in pockets, in communities, in churches, in mosques, in schools to say, this is not normal. This is not normal for people to be dying at this rate. For the first few weeks, you will look like the mad woman in the community trying to convince people that this thing that we've had for years, she's come, and eventually you have to. So once you have a group of people that have come, you don't need 100 or 200 people, then you can begin. But awareness is the first step to dealing with that problem. After you've done that kind of awareness, then you can begin to build a movement around it. But once you've done your awareness, you also want to do an analysis of why are we having such a violence or violent kind of response to different things. It could be economics, it could be different things, and you could begin to start to work on different expression of people's anger. I feel like the first step for a young person like you, so that you don't lose your hair and lose your beauty, is to create awareness to say we are in a space where things are abnormal. And I think for Cameroon, this is where they are. And I think using the platform of my time with the women, the global platform to say this is war. Even if you don't acknowledge it as war. And sometimes it takes outsiders to come and help you or people to understand that this is not normal. But awareness is, I would say, is your first tool that you should use, because violence in Jamaica has been normalized for years, and starting with young people, you should.
Thank you so much. I've also been following you for like a very long time, since undergrad.
Just to add to what what Mama mentioned. What has been happening is, in my country, it's true that the military, for example, has been doing a lot of bad things on the ground. But it's also true that the non-state armed groups have been doing a lot. But since the non-state armed groups are community members, they live with us, they are committing those atrocities, and we see it as normal, what happens is people only project what the military is doing. And back in the communities, when you call the word peace, the non-state armed groups, they fall on you. Now, why do you want peace when there is no justice? For example, recent, after we initiated the peace movement, I did a post on Facebook because we had one of the people who manipulate the non-state armed groups. One of them, most of them are based in the US. One of them called me in the heart of my workshop to intimidate me because I was talking about peace. So he threatened me and spoke to me, but when he called me, he told me he was General somebody. And I remember that Mama Lema had called her once that she was a general. So when he said, "Is this Madame Bay or Kofna?" I said, "Yes." "Who am I talking with?" He said he was General that of the Amazonia Defense or something. And I told him, "Oh, you're also talking to General Bay of the Women's Defense Force." So when I shared that on my social media page, big people started calling me. They will call me and say, "Hey, so you actually nurtured the courage to say that. These boys have been calling us and disturbing us, and we are scared of talking about it." It goes now back to the awareness. It's happening, and then we are making it normal. And that's the same thing that happens when we make gender-based violence normal. People rape, the traffic, they do all those things, we think that they are normal. But we must raise awareness and stand up against that kind of injustice.
Okay, when we ask who is to hold our leaders accountable, it's us. And by us, I mean speaking to our issues. What is affecting us and how can we hold them accountable? For example, in Crown the Woman, we work with young girls and we have different campaigns, and one of our campaigns is ending child marriage, too young to be married. And so we encourage girls to be confident and say, I don't want to be married off. And so they're able to speak on radio, they're able to have dramas, they're able to speak and say, I don't want this. And by speaking on the radio, they're already holding their leaders accountable at that young age. Who can hold them accountable is the parents we're having. By even us coming here to share our experiences, we're saying, hey, we are watching you, and if you don't change this, you will face it one day. I mean, who knew one day that Bashir will be down? Who knew that, you know? So with all these small pieces we are putting together, we are holding them accountable. It's far, but we are on that road. What can you do for us? There is a lot that each one of you can do. Just take one. How many are we here? If each one of us can say, today I am going to follow what is happening in Cameroon, in South Sudan, in Tunisia, in Nigeria, and even talk about it, you're doing something. Because when you remain silent, you're also contributing to the war. So share our stories, follow our stories, and with this, you'll be helping us. How can you, in Jamaica, what can you do? I mean, as she said, if they don't want you to mention war and a gun, use creative ways. Use art. We've seen people using art. We've seen, for example, for us in Crown the Woman, we use film where we share real stories. And when we play these films, an old woman says, I went through this. And so speak to people's problems using different ways. Thank you.
Well, two more questions, and then I think we'll call it an evening.
Thank you so much. I'm Varda Henning. I live here in the neighborhood in Harlem. I guess mainly a question for Madame Lima, but whoever else if we have time. First, I want to thank you so much for the inspiration you give us, for those of you who traveled, and I know it's after 1 a.m. for you in your time zone, so I'll keep it brief. The main thing I wanted to ask is if you could talk about what, if there was an event or a sort of time, something, a development made the armed groups in your experience come on your side, because I know that in a lot of the situations, for example, Northwest, Southwest, in Cameroon as well, on the one hand, the women they're with the armed groups and they know many of the leaders, some of the women are teachers and the armed groups are their students. On the other hand, the leaders, some of them in the diaspora, some of them on the ground, also want the power in the end. If there is a negotiated settlement at some point, they want to be up there, and so they may also see the women as a threat at the same time. I wonder if there is something you remember that sort of helped them shift that mindset from we can be behind these women, we can allow them to lead us rather than for us to be the leaders. Thank you so much.
So hi, my name is Benicia and I'm come from the Central African Republic, and I think we just near to Cameroon, and I would like to ask if as you say here, you're looking for a change and peace in our community, and I would like to ask how can we help other countries in Africa to fight for women's rights and peace from the United States? Because if we all together join our voices and try to impact the neighborhood or the rest of the world, we think women's voices should be heard, and we should make a better change for a better world.
So one of the things that I've come to realize when you're engaging with armed groups or even powerful men who use militarism as a means of solidifying their power is never go from a position of weakness. We made that mistake in Liberia during the peace talks. One of the warlords came and we thought, okay, let's kneel. He was elderly. And then he said, oh, you are kneeling. I can just imagine how when you kneel in my bedroom and I'm having sex with all of you, I said to the women, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. No. I made a silent vow from that day that even as I'm engaging and I just hear a hint of sarcasm, I will stop you there. It's either you shoot me or I let you know. So recently there is this warlord turned member of parliament in Liberia who has been in the news a lot. So we went to engage with him, the women and I. He's one of the main actors in all of this crisis we're having recently. And we sat with him to talk nicely. Some of the women came from his ethnic group. His mother used to live in my grandmother's house. So we went from that position of relationship. As we sat, I had my handbag in my lap. I was sitting next to his desk. The women were here, one person sitting in front of me. And by the time we got to introducing our mission, he was like, yes, I know you all have gotten paid and you've come to hear lies, so I'm going to give you lies. Spontaneous reaction. That's my body response now in a way that's how I know I'm getting older. I have no tolerance for rubbish. The bag flew off my lap into the lap of another woman, and my palm was on his desk. Bam! And I turned to him and said, now you listen to me. And my fingers was in his face. I came to engage you with respect. And if you want me to take it back, I will take it back. You see these two ugly legs of mine? I will walk out of this room and never look back. For all I care, you can burn this country. He went back in his seat and was looking at me like this. When I got through, he leaned forward and said, I apologize. Let's start all over. The conversation started nicely, ended nicely. He put down his position nicely, and we walked out of the room. When we walked out of the room, the women said, damn, all these traveling have never changed you. You're worse off now. It comes back to integrity. It comes back to walking your talk. It comes back to consistency. One of the things I was saying to Bay, the complications that I see with the women's movement in Cameroon, like she rightly said, there is a lot of dishonesty about who's committing atrocities. So the women are still seeing themselves as, if the Anglophone win, we are from that area, it is our victory. So I had to school them at some point in our meetings. Like, it's not going to help you. Once the warring groups see that you are clear about your position and it's about peace and it's not taking sides, it takes a while, but they begin to listen to you and they will come your way. But if you're compromising, it becomes difficult for anything to happen.
I think Omazine wanted to respond.
Actually, I had an ask from the room, as there are many students and friends that I see that are going to work for the government here, or international organizations. And building on what Rumbi said, two things. The first thing is the world is overarmed and peace is underfunded. And this is Ban Ki-moon, it's not me, the former UN Secretary General. And I went to the UN last week and I saw this horrific mural where they were estimating the budget, the military worldwide expenditure. Can you guess? Annually, it's $1,700 billion. And can you guess the budget for development, official development assistance? It's $30 billion a year. It's less than 2%. So peace is definitely underfunded. And once you get into the position where you can impact, have an influence on that, like maybe we should rebalance a little bit these dynamics. And we can actually wonder why there is more wars, and like peace is now led by youth, by women, and this is my second ask, and work is being done on the ground, but people are invisible. Like today we are so lucky to be here with Lema and with amazing activists, but these type of panels are very rare, and the stories are not being told. So be aware that this kind of work is being done, and as you said, it's because youth and women are not holding weapons. That's why they're not involved in peace processes. That's why they're not in negotiation tables. But actually they are the ones who are losing the most from wars, from conflicts, from terrorism. So they definitely need more resources. And this is where the peace funds needs to go. And these were my two asks. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming out this evening, and I think we'll end it at that lovely note from Omazine. Okay.